This is not something that is going to happen just infrequently. This is something that I was doing before the pandemic hit, and which I am coming back to doing, which is to say I am regularly going to be coming to all of these estates to ensure that the government's position on what the level of maintenance, level of cleanliness is, should be maintained, which is exactly what we were doing before and exactly what I'm going to ensure I continue doing, so that our standards of cleanliness and of maintenance are maintained, and I see that through.
And one of the issues that Mid Harbour Estate is renowned for, at least with social media, is antisocial behaviour.
Well, there's a lot less antisocial behaviour being reported to the government in respect of this estate than there was before. You know that in these works that we're doing in the areas, we're not just concentrating on the fabric of buildings, we're not just concentrating on cleanliness, we're also concentrating on people's ability to peacefully enjoy their properties, and if there are any issues, then those are brought to my attention as well. The police is joining us to ensure that they also see the issues that citizens in this area may want to raise with us.
On your visit to Varelbeg Estate, you did say perhaps Varelbeg needed a bit more investment in terms of the refurbishment. This is one of the newer estates. What's your assessment?
Well, my assessment is that here we need to do maintenance in some areas. I know that we're moving the children's park because there's been an issue with water penetration into the garage there, so that needs to be completed. I've seen some small areas of work being required. I haven't seen any vandalism. I think that those issues are under control here, so much less work will have to be done because of wanton vandalism here, and it's more a question of maintaining the estate.
And you mentioned there these are not just visits that are happening now, they've been happening in the past as well. What's your reply to the GSD's statement that the estates are being cleaned, deep cleaned ahead of your visit?
Well, the estates are deep cleaned quite regularly, and unfortunately the deep cleaning that happens is sometimes almost immediately undone. I have photographs to be able to show that even on occasions when I haven't been visiting the estate and when there aren't any things happening in the estate, the normal day-to-day cleaning happens, and yet within half an hour somebody will allow their dog to foul the area, somebody else will create vandalism in the area, or there may be other reasons why there is dirt in the area. And I've got a lot of good work going on between the cleaning company and tenants associations, and the tenants associations will say to me, look, here is a photograph of Britannia cleaning in depth, and here is a photograph half an hour later of some tenants in the estates allowing their dogs, etc., to do their business in the area which is just being cleaned. So I think it's unfair to say that there's just one cause to this. I think it's unfair to suggest that I'm just doing this on a one-off basis and areas are being cleaned on a one-off basis. But I don't think it's unfair to say that the GSD are trying to clutch at straws, that they'll grapple at anything that they hope will give them an advantage, and they are not happy to see that things are going to start once again picking up after the pandemic in the estates, that we are going to maintain the estates as they should be maintained, that we're going to ensure that the cleanliness is what it is, because they want to play off people's misery. They want there to be no maintenance, they want there to be no cleanliness, and they want to ride that wave of misery into government. There's going to be no misery in Gibraltar, and they're not going to get into government.
You mentioned there the refurbishment, the maintenance of the estates. A number of the older estates have seen that multi-million-pound investment we talked about yesterday. Just before the pandemic hit, governments also outlined and earmarked a number of other smaller government estates and buildings which would also be refurbished. Where are we with that in terms of, we're now post-COVID, the economy is looking different now. Is that still going ahead?
Well, they're not going to head straight away because there isn't the money to invest in the capital projects, but I hope that they will be able to go ahead in the next financial year once we've started the process of recovery in a properly phased way. We said when we were first elected in 2011-12 that we couldn't do all the refurbishments at once. We did 3 of the biggest estates. First off, Glacis, Laguna and Moorish Castle. Then we tackled Alameda Estate. There are other smaller estates like Knights Court, etc. that need to be done. Varelbeg needs a lot of tender loving care. The refurbishment done there was not of the standard that we've done in other estates, so we need to do some there. This area needs maintenance, not refurbishment, and other estates need that investment in order to give a return on investment for the government. But then, of course, if you ask me about what the GSD say that we spend too much money. They say that we spend too much money refurbishing estates. They wouldn't have wanted us to do the refurbishment of the estates, but they would have wanted to criticize us for not having maintenance and not having refurbishment. So all of these things have to happen. They have to happen properly, they have to be scheduled properly, and we will ensure that they continue to happen, but in the context of the constraints that we have economically and financially, so that we're delivering to tenants the estates that they deserve to have, and at the same time we're delivering value for money to the taxpayer and to all of us as a community, the obligation of spending no more than we can afford to.
And it can't happen with the bigger estates logistically. Does government have any plans to perhaps vacate smaller estates or smaller government-owned buildings, perhaps to release them to private investment and vacate those people into other areas?
Well, as you know, we have an ongoing program in that respect. When it comes to pre-war property, what we're doing is we think that pre-war property in most instances is too expensive for the government to refurbish. So we ensure that in the pre-war properties, as our tenants have moved on, many of them to pensioner accommodation, we release those to third parties. They can refurbish them. They make a better refurbishment that the government would be able to make. That happens principally in the Old Town and is how we have driven the urban renewal in the Old Town using private investment and not public money. We do not believe that makes any economic sense whatsoever to pursue the absolutely foolish and wasteful policy that the GSD was pursuing of selling our post-war government stock to tenants and allow them as third parties the benefit of those apartments as their private apartments, which they can then leave to their children, or they can leave locked up, or they can use as a holiday home if they no longer want to live in Gibraltar. We think that was a complete and utter waste of taxpayers' money, which saw us alienating from the common ownership of the people apartments which had a huge potential social value, and sell them for peanuts, in fact less than peanuts, and then have to reprovide them at a hugely elevated modern construction cost. We will not be pursuing such foolishness as the GSD were pursuing in government in that respect.
One last one, if I may. Perhaps it's early days, or perhaps not. In the run-up to the next election, there have been calls, repeated calls from Henry Bina, Action for Housing, on the need for more government estate, government rental stock. What's your take on that? I know government perhaps has not been on the same side as Mr. Bina on that argument. What are your thoughts?
So we're in the last quarter of the 4-year cycle. It's hardly the last moment. The last quarter is still 25% of the lifetime of this parliament to run, and let's be clear, it's going to run. But I've been very clear about the issue of building for rental. We believe that despite the foolishness that was being pursued by the GSD, I don't know whether with the support or not the support of Mr. Bina and Action for Housing, of permitting sitting tenants to buy their properties. If Action for Housing was supporting that, it was foolish and, in my view, immoral for them to do so, whilst at the same time asking us to build new accommodation for rental at 10 or 20 times the cost at which we had sold the existing accommodation that we had for rental. But we have continued to build for rental. We have built a lot of properties for rental for pensioners, and those pensioners who are living in large rental properties of the government, large post-war properties of the government where they have built their families. They may be in a 3, 4, 5 bedroom property where they have built their families and they're now on their own. We give them a pensioner flat, and that is the best use of taxpayers' money. That is what we will continue to pursue. We have a number of projects on foot which may or may not be able to go ahead depending on the economics, given where we are in the state of the public finances, and we will continue to look for those projects going forward. So we will continue to provide rental accommodation for our community as we have been doing. We will continue to build rental accommodation for our community, because for every pensioner flat that we build, we get back not just one, sometimes we get back 1, 2 or 3 properties. If you only build new rental accommodation, you get the one that you've built, but you don't get back any of the others because you're keeping an elderly person in a very large property that they don't need and in many instances don't even want. But if you release that person from that large property, you sometimes have them living in a 5-bedroom. Somebody who's living in a 4-bedroom waiting for a 5-bedroom releases the 4-bedroom. The person who is in the 3-bedroom that needs the 4-bedroom releases the 3-bedroom, and the person who's in the 2-bedroom who releases it because they go into the 3-bedroom allows you the 2-bedroom for the person who needs that bed sitter with a flat. So look, that is the best way to use taxpayers' money. Nobody can persuade me that that is not the best way to use taxpayers' money, and I think those who insist simply on the black and white, you must build more for rental across the board, are not understanding the economics of this and the need to do this properly.